All right, good morning. I'm going to show you some post-reading activities that use higher level thinking and thinking skills. Very simple, but some basic things I want you to know about. First of all, just keep in mind Bloom's taxonomy. There's lower levels of thinking and higher levels of thinking. And as well, there are action words associated with Bloom's. We are going to look at some of these action words, and I'm going to show you how these action words can be used to create activities, specifically post-reading or post-lesson activities. First of all, each one of these action words is a cognitive process or a thinking process, and they're associated with higher level thinking. To teach any cognitive process, you want to break it down into parts and teach it specifically using thinking frames. A thinking frame is a cognitive process broken down into parts, and it is displayed in the classroom on a poster or bulletin board so you can teach it and so students can refer to it. And thinking of any kind is taught best using a graphic organizer. A graphic organizer is a visual representation that helps students generate and organize their ideas. And with any cognitive process that you teach, and I'll be showing you these examples, you should teach in large group many times so you can think out loud, cognitive modeling. Have them do it in small group and pairs many times, and eventually they'll internalize it. Students will be able to do it by themselves. The first one, compare and contrast. That is the thinking frame. Look at both, identify similarities, differences, ideas, and conclusions. If I wanted students to compare and contrast two characters from a story or two books, in large group, we would first look for similarities, then for differences, and then any big ideas that they might have. Very simple. Post-reading activity, post-lesson activity. Analysis. Look at the whole, identify the parts, identify important elements. And again, a simple thing of identify interesting or important events that occurred in each part of the story. This gives me a better sense of how the student is processing the story than some silly comprehension worksheet, which does absolutely nothing to help students comprehend. Gives me a sense of what the student thinks is important and how the student perceives the story as a whole. Analyze story parts or chapter parts. There's just another graphic that shows the same thing. Infer. If I want students to be able to infer or to create inferences, I must teach them explicitly. Post-reading, post-lesson activity. Look at the inference question. Look at the text clues. Make an inference based on text clues. All right? An inference is different than a guess. What kind of person was Professor Marvel? That asks us to go beyond the text. You don't just make guesses. First, in large group, you would list clues. Then you would make an inference on the clue. Very important with inference that you list the clues first and make a prediction or a guess based on the clues, or a conclusion, I should say. Come to a conclusion. Same with predict. It's not just a guess. Look at the story, list the clues, make a prediction based on the clues. What will happen next? Get students to list clues. I would use this graphic organizer in large group many times. And this is something you could use at the level of kindergarten and first grade. Oh yes, you could simple it up. And I could use this at the level of graduate students as well. Teach students how to predict. Eventually they will internalize the process. They'll be able to do it themselves. Evaluation, critique, the thinking frame. Look at the whole, identify criteria, look at the criteria, rate or rank the whole based on the criteria. This is great with books and stories and movies. In small group, find 3 movies, book stories that you've all seen and rate them. This creates conversation around what is a good book, and it eventually leads to discussion about genre. Now, it's not important that they agree on criteria and what is a good book and not a good book, or a good movie and not a good movie. The important part is that they are having conversations about books, and that's a good thing. My criteria for a good movie: In small group, oh, we would have discussion about this. So I would rate them. I could also rank them. And looking at these criteria, Conan the Barbarian, one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's first, I believe it was second movie, is the best movie of all time based on these criteria. When students do this with books, they eventually, as I said, talk about genre. Wait a minute, I can't compare a piece of historical fiction the way I would compare a narrative story or a Harry Potter story. So this naturally leads to talk about story genre. Please let our children read. Please, getting them to read is the most important thing. Helping children fall in love with books is a teacher's #1 job. After that, everything else is easy.